Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video here on iStarly TV. Today we're going to be talking about the Greninja 7-star Tera raids, which are coming very soon. As of the posting of this video, they are only a few hours away, so we are very close to the Greninja raids. I'm super excited about them. I imagine a lot of other people are as well. Greninja's a super popular Pokemon and just a really fun and strong Pokemon. So let's get right to it. I have made what I think might be some of the better Pokemon, better sets to take down the 7-star Greninja raid. Now I will specify first of all, these are made specifically for soloing purposes. So if you plan to solo the Greninja raids, which I think most people probably will try to do, this is the best way to do it. If you're jumping online with random people, you could still use some of these sets, but it's also possible that there are others that work better for a teamwork setting, if that makes any sense. Also, if you're playing with friends, if you have other friends who can do the raids with you, then there's a lot more options that open up. Like for example, a Pokemon like Toxapex is actually really amazing against Greninja because it actually can take a ton of Greninja's moves really well, but the thing is Toxapex just doesn't deal that much damage. So Toxapex would be a great support option for Greninja if you're playing with friends, but it's not there to take down Greninja in terms of, doing a ton of damage to it. So before we talk about the individual sets that I think are going to be good at taking down 7-star Greninja, let's actually talk about Greninja itself really briefly. Greninja is a water and dark type. It's going to have the poison Tera type, which means it's going to virtually have 3 types, which is actually really good for it because it means that those 3 types cover each other really well, and some Pokemon that you think would have a decent shot at handling Greninja are actually going to be weak to some of the moves that Greninja knows. Also, Greninja has a really expansive move pool. It learns a lot of different moves of a lot of different typings, and the truth is we really don't know exactly which moves Greninja is going to be using just yet, but we can take a guess given the ones that are more strong and more common. Also, Greninja's stats are interesting. It actually has a base 95 attack stat, which is okay, and a base 103 special attack stat, which is pretty decent. Just for comparison though, Cinderace has a base 117 attack stat. So Greninja's actually hitting a lot less hard than Cinderace, but the kind of caveat there is that Greninja has the potential to hit from a physical or special side, which makes it a little difficult to prepare for it specifically, because with Cinderace we knew it was going to be a physical attacker, so we could kind of prepare Pokemon with a lot of physical defense to take it down, such as Slowbro of course. With Greninja there is a possibility that it might have moves that hit from your weaker defensive stat, so we'll keep that in mind with some of the sets I made. Also, of course, Greninja's moves with water type stab, it has Water Shuriken, which is pretty weak. It has Hydro Pump, which is really strong but very inaccurate, and then of course it has Surf. I imagine it's just going to have one of those 3 moves, not more than one, and I would guess it's Surf just because it's pretty strong but also 100% accurate. But if it has Hydro Pump as a move, that's actually really good for us because again, it's pretty inaccurate, so there's a chance that it'll miss sometimes. From the dark type side of things, Greninja does learn Night Slash, which of course is a decent physical move, but I don't think it'll have Night Slash. I do think it will have Dark Pulse. So Dark Pulse is a 80 base power dark type move, of course, that hits from the special side. And of course that's Greninja's stronger stat. So I do believe it will have Dark Pulse, and I think that's a pretty good move. So obviously you're going to want to keep that in mind. A lot of the Pokemon I'll be talking about here pretty much resist one of Greninja's moves, one of Greninja's kind of common moves, and then they will kind of take neutral damage from some of the others. From there, as far as other coverage options are concerned, Greninja does learn the moves Brick Break / Low Kick, so it learns a fighting type move, which is a physical move, Ice Beam, and Extra Sensory. I think these are all moves that we can expect. Maybe not all of them. I'm not sure Greninja will know all 3 of those moves, but I feel pretty confident guessing that it'll have at least 1 and maybe 2 of those moves. So that means Pokemon like Clodsire, who would otherwise be excellent against Greninja, are not going to be quite as good because they're weak to Extra Sensory and Ice Beam. Also, another Pokemon that I thought looked really good against Greninja here was going to be Hydreigon, but Hydreigon is weak to fighting and it's weak to Ice Beam, so it's weak to, again, some of those coverage options. So unfortunately, that's not a good option here. because of Greninja's coverage. Finally, as far as poison type stab, of course, this Greninja is a Tera poison type, which means it's very, very likely going to have a poison type move. The two options it's going to have are either going to be Gunk Shot, which is really strong but also inaccurate, also has the chance of poisoning, which is pretty annoying, and Tera Blast. And if it has Tera Blast, it'll be a special move, 80 base power. So I kind of hope it's Tera Blast. Tera Blast makes sense, but at the same time, I would not be surprised if they just give it Gunk Shot just because it is more powerful. So Gunk Shot is, again, it's a trade-off. On the plus side, Gunk Shot is inaccurate, so it'll miss sometimes. On the downside, if it has Gunk Shot, there is a chance it'll poison you. So also it's a strong physical type move, which means that if you have a Pokemon with high special defense, you could take a lot of damage potentially from Gunk Shot. So those are the moves that Greninja can possibly learn. It also has Bounce, it also has Rock Slide. I personally don't think it'll have either of those, but it's very possible. Maybe they'll surprise us and there will be multiple different Greninja sets, and the Greninja will have a possibility of having, 10 different moves. I think Charizard had about 5 or 6 different moves that it could pull from in the raid, and I think Cinderace was pretty much the same. It had about 5 moves or so that it could use throughout the raid. I hope they keep that the same with Greninja, but again, Greninja's weaker than Charizard and Cinderace, but also more versatile. And so let's get to my sets here. I have 3 or 4 that I want to talk about here. The first is Klefki, and I actually think this might be the, just guessing right now, I feel confidently that this will be one of the strongest Pokemon to solo Greninja for a few different reasons. So Klefki's not the strongest Pokemon in the world, but it does get a few key things, no pun intended, that make it a good option here. So its stats are decently well-rounded, its HP stat is okay, its special attack stat is okay, and then its defense and special defense are actually decent, like they're slightly above average, and its typing is excellent here. It resists, as a steel and fairy type, it resists dark, it's immune to poison, and it also resists ice for what it's worth, and then it takes neutral damage from water, which makes it pretty good in this option. Now again, Klefki's HP is not amazing, and its defensive stats are slightly above average. I guess they're like decent, they're like okay. But I think one big thing that kind of sets Klefki apart is its ability Prankster. So the goal here is very similar as you see the set here. Of course, the goal here is very similar to the Slowbro set, where you basically set up a bunch of iron defenses, set up a bunch of calm minds, and then you click stored power and hope to one-shot the Greninja. Of course, Greninja is weak to stored power, so it's going to take a lot of damage from that. But the big difference here that I think can really, really help, again, is Prankster. And Prankster means that you can set up Iron Defense or Calm Mind with priority, so you get to move first. Now, I imagine that this Greninja raid will be kind of like the previous 2 raids where the previous 2 7-star raids where it'll get off a move immediately, like right as the battle begins. You won't have a chance to do anything. It'll just use a move and then go from there. The battle will go from there. So depending on what that move is, it could be Hydro Pump, it could be Water Shuriken, it could be Swords Dance. I mean, it does learn Swords Dance, which will boost its weaker attack stat, and Cinderace did use Bulk Up turn 1, so it could be like that. On the other hand, though, Charizard used Overheat on turn 1, so it could be a damaging move that it uses first, could be a setup move. Either way, I think that this Prankster ability is great because you can set up your defense or special defense before Greninja is able to attack you. Well, maybe, but you get to set it up early, which will, obviously make you take hits a lot better. So it's kind of like you virtually have better defensive stats than you normally do because of Prankster. For the last move, I have Metal Sound here, which will harshly lower Greninja's special defense. I think that's a decent option as well. Although you can't go like Iron Defense 3 times, you can't go Calm Mind 6 times, and then Metal Sound 3 times. You can't do all of that because eventually Greninja is going to reset your stats or reset its stats. So you have to kind of use them sparingly. I think Calm Mind might be the better option to try to prioritize because of the fact that it boosts your special attack and your special defense. And of course, Greninja is more likely going to have more special moves. So I think that's better there. And then you can use Metal Sound to kind of weaken it and then go from there and then try to kill it. You might not one-shot it like Slowbro did. And so if that's the case, you know, if you don't one-shot it, maybe for that last slot you could run Psychic, or maybe in place of Iron Defense you could run Psychic if you're not really afraid of Greninja's physical moves. Again, Gunk Shot you are immune to, so you don't need to worry about that one at all. And then the other moves it gets, like Rock Slide and Bounce, you resist if it has those moves. Otherwise, Brick Break is the one that you might worry about a little more, but I'm not that worried about that. Maybe they would give Greninja Liquidation or something, which would be a lot scarier, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Like I said, Greninja's special water moves are its better water moves, so I feel like that's what they're going to do. So the last move could be Reflect, it could be Light Screen, it could be Psychic, again, just so that you have a move that does decent damage without requiring you to set up. So those are the options I would go with for Klefki. And as far as item is concerned, maybe Leftovers, but the thing about Leftovers is that while it's a really good item, it takes time from the battle. So every single turn, it's really annoying. It does the little animation and then says you recovered like health from your leftovers or something like that, which that animation and that little phrase right there, that it just takes up so much time. So I think you're better off either with like a berry for health, or Light Clay as an item if you're using Reflect or Light Screen to keep those screens on the field for longer, or just the Twisted Spoon item to boost the damage of your Psychic type attacks. But yeah, I think Klefki's a good option here. It might not one-shot like Slowbro did, but I think you have a better chance at survivability, and you do have access again to Metal Sound, whereas Slowbro didn't have a move like that. The next option here is Vaporeon, which is another great option. It's just a bulky water type, and in fact, I think water types are kind of your best bet in general, because, you know, a pure water type like Vaporeon does not take super effective damage from any of Greninja's moves, and Vaporeon is very bulky. It's bulky enough to the point where you actually do not need to invest in HP, because its HP size is already massive, so you can of course invest in special attack, and I've decided to invest in special defense. You could, again, if we find that Greninja has more physical moves or Swords Dance, you probably do want to go with investing in defense, but you also have Acid Armor to boost your defense by a lot. And again, this is very similar to the Slowbro set, where you set up Acid Armors, you set up Calm Minds, and then you click Stored Power and hopefully kill them. Once again, for items, I think Twisted Spoon is a good option. For the last slot there, I don't think you want Wish. I have Wish just for some recovery, but I actually think there are better options. I think Vaporeon learns Screens, so you could go. Oh, I guess it doesn't. Never mind. That's fine then. I wouldn't have really recommended it anyway for Vaporeon, but you could go Hydro Pump just to hit hard. Of course, it is inaccurate though, but you know that's an option. You could also go Muddy Water, which is also inaccurate, but has the chance of lowering Greninja's accuracy, which is pretty decent. Some other options are Mud Slap, which is extremely weak, but will always lower Greninja's its accuracy, which can help a lot, especially if Greninja is relying on Hydro Pump and Gunk Shot, for example. Of course, you can also go Chilling Water, which will lower its attack stat. I think that's a good support option. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it'll lower its attack stat, which can also help. So those are the options for Vaporeon here. I think I like Vaporeon as far as defensive typing goes. But again, it's a similar set to the Slowbro build with the Cinderace raids. It's just that you might not be hitting quite as hard immediately, so that is definitely something that you want to keep in mind. And finally, there's Rotom Wash, which I think is another solid option with max HP, max special attack. Of course, if you want to focus more on one of the defenses, that could also be a good option. Rotom does learn Screens. It learns Light Screen and Reflect. You could choose both or one of those. I would recommend just Light Screen. I mean, depending on what Greninja knows, but still, I think Light Screen is a good option if you want to go that route with the Light Clay item. These moves, you probably don't want Hydro Pump, but once again, this one it has more special attack outright, so I think if you maybe set up 3 Nasty Plots and then click Stored Power, that might be enough, and even if it's not, you still have a pretty solid special attack stat alongside Thunderbolt, which is just a solid move. You could also go Discharge if you want to do decent damage with the chance of paralyzing Greninja. So I actually think Rotom is a solid option as well. Just being a water type again, and it just has an amazing typing. It's not going to be weak to any of Greninja's moves. It has decent bulk, so I actually might try some Rotom Wash myself, again, depending on what the Greninja knows. Of course, I'm going to be afraid of moves like Gunk Shot and even Dark Pulse, because, you know, Rotom's longevity is not that great, but if you can happen to get up several Nasty Plots and click Stored Power, I do think it's going to do a lot of damage. So that is it for these options for Greninja raids. Like I said, if you're doing it with friends, the options are going to open up a lot more for you. You can try Clodsire, you can try Toxapex, you can maybe try Hydreigon, but again, those are probably not the best options for soloing because they're weak to one of the moves, and Greninja's just going to hard focus on you, and yeah, it's not going to go well. So I'm really excited for these raids, and of course, this all might change once we know more about Greninja's moves and its stats and what it does and everything. There's a chance that we find the best build that is not one of these Pokemon. But just if you want to just do the raids right away and you're looking for a Pokemon, I would recommend Klefki or Rotom personally. So if you have one of those, but if you have Vaporeon as well, again, you know, I would recommend that one as well. These are the Pokemon that I would personally recommend because I think they all have a good shot at taking on Greninja 1v1. And then again, once we learn more about it, that might evolve, but for right now, these just seem like the best options. All the other Pokemon, like I said before, that hit really hard or have potential to like just do a ton of damage, unfortunately, they all have a weakness that Greninja can exploit. So either way, let me know in the comments, because this could also be a good opportunity for us as a community to come together. If you have any ideas, maybe there's a Pokemon I missed here that you think is not weak to any of Greninja's moves and has some good options to deal a lot of damage to it. Maybe I forgot. And so you're welcome to let me know in the comments, or let all of us know in the comments what Pokemon you are going to try for these raids. Again, my focus is mainly on soloing the raids, but in general, if there's anything at all that you'd like to talk about regarding these raids, leave it in the comments and I'll respond to some of you and let you know how dumb I am for having forgotten, or let you know if it's a good idea or not. But either way, thank you very much for watching. I'm excited for the raids. I'll see you out there on the field.